Bruce, I don't know how you do it. How do you navigate a cowboy hat? Really, it's...
It's an art form.
It is. I can't even learn in the car to drive because it's the back of the...
That's why they have those flip down hat racks in the ceiling of the cars.
Is that what they're for?
It's just more than wearing a hat, it's all the accoutrements that come with it.
This is a song that I wrote a few years back. I heard a talk on I Am and how important it is that what I say after I am is really important. So this is a song I sat down and I thought, well, what am I? And this is what came out, came through. You all good? One, two, three, four. I am thankful, grateful for all the things that made me who I am. I am. I am joyful, peaceful for all the present moments in I am. In this space, in this place, I am. Sunbeams, raindrops, for every rainbow's glory, and I am. I am in you, in us, the universe connecting in I am. Divinely created in the essence of love, within and without, below as above. I am in this space, in this place. I am. In the here, in the now. I I have to say the band this morning, we got through rehearsal tickety-boo, and we have Ian Dickow on the drums with us this morning. He's never played with us before, and just sat in and there he went. Yeehaw!
Very good. Wow, what a beautiful song. And that's a Vivian original. Nice, eh? All right, well, I'm pretty sure most of you know our speaker. But there are some new people here who perhaps haven't had the privilege of hearing Susan Cullen speak. And this morning she's going to be speaking about magnificent multidimensional you. And when she told me the title, I thought it was so perfect because that's exactly how I see Susan. That she is so multi-talented. I don't know how many of you know that she is someone who does so many things in life for so many people. She is a certified life coach with an ACC designation from the International Coach Federation. And she tends to coach people who she feels are being called to transform the world, to help them discover the clarity, the capacity, and the courage to be who they truly are, and to create with passion. And that is a tall order. And what I would say is Susan is someone who truly lives that herself. She boldly is growing and changing and looking at her growing edge of how to be all that she can be. And if there's something that she doesn't know how to do, she really digs in and learns how to do it, which is something that I admire. And this morning, she's going to share with us about what it's like to be a multi-dimensional, magnificent person. Please welcome the lovely Miss Susan Cullen.
Thank you, Katie. All right, well, yes, well, multidimensional can mean a variety of things. There's multi-dimensions. Well, science tells us that there's, I think there's like, I don't know, they found like 9 or 12 dimensions now. And the way to think of it is like a radio station, right? Whatever you have the radio station, whatever you have the dial on in the moment is what you are accessing. But if you change the dial, then you're accessing a different level of vibration, a different channel, so to speak, right? So apparently there's all these different levels. So, yes, magnificent multidimensional you. Well, I should have read the daily word for today before preparing my talk, because basically that just summed it right up. That's exactly what I was going to talk about. That's what I am going to talk about. But I'm going to start with a story. And if you were at Brave Souls last September, you will have heard this story before. But I'm going to talk about it in a different respect, in a different perspective. So it was, let's see, about 8 years ago, I guess now. And it was an ordinary day. And I have to say, it's a story that I had not talked about until last year for the first time. It was the first time that I talked about it. And then after I spoke about it at Brave Souls, I got some more interesting perspective from it, which is why I'm bringing it back today. So it was an ordinary day. I was taking the kids to the school bus. We left the house, I had the dog. We come around the corner and the school bus is waiting, as it always was, so that we could do the 100-yard dash down the alley to make it before the bus driver closed the door and took off. And so the kids got on the bus and I gave them a kiss and I had the dog, and my routine at that time was to take the dog for a walk in the nearby park. And it's an off-leash park, so off we go, put him off the leash, and we're doing our little circuit that we did every morning on the way back to the house. And I saw, as we were coming around this one part of the park, that there was this young man who was very disheveled. This park often has people who are homeless in it. I recognize most of them. This was somebody who was not known to me, hadn't seen him before. And there's just something about him that sort of had my spidey senses go, yeah, let's give this guy a wide berth. And so as I came around, I sort of go way around where he was. But I was keeping my eye on where he was. And so as we sort of passed him and moved towards where we were going to be exiting the park from, I turned around and saw him cross behind us and go into the bushes. Given his state and what he looked like, I assumed that probably he was going there to relieve himself, which was not an uncommon occurrence in this park. And so I continued on, but I just had this awareness, this sort of heightened awareness, and I could feel my intuition was like, I don't know if you've ever experienced that state of heightened intuition. It was just, I was really present to the moment. And so as I started walking towards the exit of the park, there was this one particular part. So there's the road, there's Center Street, then there's all these bushes, and then there's the park on this side. And as I'm heading towards the exit of the park narrows, and there's this one particular part where there's a big shed, like a big landscaping shed, and then there's about 15 feet, and then there's the bushes. And so as I came to this narrowed part in the park on the way out, my intuition said, put the dog on the leash. So I said, okay. So I put the dog on the leash, and he was with me. And so we were walking, and as I came to this narrowed part that was kind of hidden as well, I heard footsteps behind me. And I sort of didn't know what to do at that moment. I just kept walking until my intuition said, turn around now. So I stopped and I turned around, and it was this young man who had his hands like this. He was about 5 feet from me. His hands up, presumably, I assume getting ready to grab me. And at that moment, I had this, it's like one of those Matrix moments where time stopped, and my awareness split into three. And I was aware in this moment of three different parts of myself at the same time. Hard to describe. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience? Okay, yes. I imagine most people who are here have had out-of-body experiences, because that's why we come together to sort of figure out what the heck is going on here, right? So it was like an out-of-body experience, except I had this awareness of these three different parts of myself. So the first part was my ego and my intellectual mind. And I listened in, and it was saying things like, this can't be happening, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you're just being judgmental of this guy, it's not really, this doesn't happen to you. And most strange of all was, you're wearing rain boots. So I'm like, okay. And then there was the next part that I tuned into. And this was like, almost like the energetic part that is so connected to, I would say it's my intuitive energy body that was 100% aware of what was going on. And it was the part of me that told me to put the dog on the leash, to turn around now, right? It's the one that sort of heightened my spidey senses to know that I needed to really be paying attention to what was happening. And then the third part, this is the surprising part. The third part was this other part, and I'm saying it's like levels like this, but honestly, in reflection, I think it's more like deepening levels within me as opposed to higher up levels. But this other part, as I tuned in, sort of put its feet up on the table and said, well, this is going to be interesting. Okay. And I was like, wow, well, that's, what part is that, right? What part is that? So I'm going to pause the story for a moment. I will tell you the end of the story. I'm going to pause the story at the moment because that was the moment, and that was the piece that really puzzled me. And at the beginning, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, wow, like, this was, what part of me was this detached part that didn't seem to care about me or care about what was happening. But then I realized that actually was not true. That what this part was that deepest part of me that is connected to the all, that is connected to everything. It was what we would refer to as the big I am. So what Charles Fillmore says about this, he says, the I am is the metaphysical name of the spiritual self as distinguished from the human self. So again, I was thinking, okay, so the spiritual part of me didn't care what was happening, didn't care about this incident. And again, what I realized is that wasn't true at all. But that part of me lives in this place of absolute truth. So when we're talking about affirmative prayer and meditation, and we're doing our affirmations as Unity teaches, right? A lot of times it can seem as if we are denying reality. But actually what we're doing instead is we are trying to connect our presence and our awareness to this deeper place of truth. Again, I'm pointing up because I don't know how to point in. deeper, I don't know. But it's this deeper place of truth. Right? So what this experience showed me so beautifully is that this saying that we sometimes hear, it's all good, right? Well, from a perspective, the perspective of the absolute truth, from the absolute spiritual realm, that is true, right? This part of me was not concerned about what was happening. Now, what was happening was very real, right? It was very real. It was, there was something to be concerned about in the moment from this perspective, but I understood it from a different place, right? And then I thought, well, and as Charles says, there's this spiritual self and this human self. So what is the connection between these two? If I am multidimensional and I have these different parts of myself that live simultaneously in these different dimensions and this is going on, then what is the point? Well, again, Charles says, what is the chief objective of humankind? To glorify God in the body. So what that says to me is it is about flowing that spiritual I am presence into my human life, into my human experience, into my human body. Right? That is our That is our big objective, and that makes a lot of sense to me, right? That makes a lot of sense. And I've heard a lot of people in spiritual communities and spiritual movement talk about wanting to transcend and just sort of, escape their human bodies, transcend, to go up and get over it and to be living at this other place. Except that we're here. We're here on the planet. We're here on the planet for a reason, right? So to me, it only makes sense that that's not so, that rather it is to be able to flow that spiritual energy through us onto the planet. Right? And Jean Houston has a beautiful quote about this that I found. She says, she calls it, by the way, spiritual communion. So this idea of this integration, and she says, spiritual communion goes a step beyond the understanding of self as an extension of the larger self. It's the ability to create as that larger self in everything you do, in your work, your relationships, your families, your aspirations, and your vision. Which in a way kind of speaks to our fifth principle, which is we don't have to just know it, but we have to live it. Right? Not about just knowing and understanding, but it's actually about living it. So as I was thinking about what this looks like, I was thinking that it's kind of like that this I'll call it the I am awareness, the I am presence, is flowing through us all the time. And as a baby, it flows perfectly through us all the time, right? That's why when you hold a baby, like you see the universe, you see that you feel God, right? And as we grow up, as you remember from my last talk in February, if you were here, we have things that happen to us that split off bits of our consciousness. And what I see happening is it creates kinks in the hose. And I don't think it's actually limiting the flow of that I am presence through us, but I think what it does is it limits our perception and our awareness of it. Right? Because it is always everywhere present. Right? But we may not realize it. How can we then begin to, first of all, be aware and then flow that I am presence through us into our lives? Well, the number one thing is doing our work, right? And that's what Katie talked about so beautifully last time she spoke in May. It's about taking care of that human part of us, because I think that those kinks in the hose, those split up parts of our consciousness, those unhealed wounds are what block our perception. And that as we heal those wounds, we are able to increase our capacity to not only know and realize and understand, but to flow that beauty into the world, to flow that I am presence. So the other way we can do this is to consciously connect to this I am presence. And how we do that here at Unity is through prayer and meditation, right? So it's understanding that, I should ask, has anyone been a little bit confused about this prayer thing where it seems kind of like we're denying what's really happening? Yeah? I was. I really was. I was very like, are we just denying it and, pretending and spiritual bypass, and until I realized, as I reflected on this experience, that what we are actually doing is we are making a conscious connection to that very real part of us that does exist in this other dimension, where everything is, in a sense, okay and perfect. It is the allness, it is as it is, right? So of course I have to be challenged by this. And last night, as I was doing the last bits of my talk and deciding what quotes I was going to use, and got up this morning. First of all, my youngest son came to me last night with a very heartfelt, serious issue. So I was like, wow, okay. And then this morning, my oldest son, who was at the moment over in Germany on a special program, texted and said he's very, very sick and can't get out of bed. So let me tell you, my ego self goes, oh my God, what's gonna happen? This is terrible, this is horrible. My intuitive self goes, okay, what needs to happen here? What needs to go on here? And what I realized I needed to do was to raise my awareness, or go deeper, whatever way you want to look at it, to that I am place and go, okay. I'm here, he is there. It is what it is. What's happening is happening. And I just have to stay connected to my intuition to know what to do, if there is anything to do. And to begin by holding him in love, holding me in love, and trusting that however things pan out will be what needs to happen, right? Our ego sometimes has been called edging God out, right? Because if we get into that ego space, that's exactly what happens, right? The ego space is the space of our time-space continuum and what's going on for us right now. Okay. So, next time I'm going to pick a different topic. So, part of the spiritual work is remembering who you are. You ready for the kicker? When triggered. Right? When things are going well, it's all good and fine, and you're thinking, yeah, I'm a spiritual person. Things are going dandy for me. Right? And then something happens, and it triggers your wound, and suddenly you're not that spiritual person anymore, right? You are, but maybe you just forget for a little bit. So any kind of work that you can do which sheds light on those wounds, whether it's the Q process, whether it's counseling, whether it's having a coffee with a friend, dream work, whatever it is, the mode that you need to begin to heal those wounds, to increase your capacity to flow this I am presence, is what's going to make a huge difference, not only in your life, I will assert this, but also for the world. And as I said, Jean Houston calls this spiritual communion. And I love her quote. It was too long to put on the slide. So what she said was, how do you know? What's your indication that you've got this spiritual communion happening? Right? How do you know? She says, when we stand in the presence of one who is merged with his or her larger self, you can feel it. It's more than just a peaceful countenance. It's as if they live and create from a perspective that invites new ways of thinking and imagining. They seem to cherish life and to have achieved a freedom of choice that is larger than their situations and more inclusive than their past experiences. So it expands possibility, expands choice, it expands creativity, it expands love and presence and peace. And if it's doing that in our lives, then it has to be doing it also in the world, right? And we become that beacon of light, right? We're talking about spiritual awakening in our vision. In our mission, we're talking about expressing our divine essence. That's what this is. That's what this work is. When triggered, and always, right? When triggered, when always. Okay, so I will finish with the story, the end of the story. So, the end of the story. I'm standing there. I turn around. My dog, by the way, is of no help whatsoever. He's sitting there looking up like this with his ears down, his tail between his legs. So, thanks for that. I have just had this experience of this expanded awareness. And what then happens in this moment is my intuitive self, that place that was completely heightened and aware of all of what was going on and exists on this energetic field where it has more information about everything outside of my day-to-day awareness. I feel this intuitive part of me summon strength from the earth. And I feel beside me this force field rise up as if I was there with my sense at that moment coming from Mother Earth was with a million other women who stood with me. The young man who was like this, frozen in this moment, looked up like this. I don't know what he saw, but he put his hands down, he put his head down, he turned around, and he walked the other way. I turned around, yanked my dog, wanted to he was still frozen in that moment. And we left the park, and of course I phoned the police and told them what happened. So the interesting thing to me is, and I didn't do anything per se. I didn't scream, I didn't fight, I was really kind of mystified by this awareness of, oh, this will be interesting, right? Like, huh? This will be interesting. So how about we take this into meditation and see if we can find that place within us that is that I am place. We'll start by singing I Remember, and then I'll do, Vivian will lead us in that, and then I will do a guided meditation, and then we will sing I Remember again coming out.
I remember who I am. I remember who I am. I remember
deep breath in. And as you let it go of anything that is in the way of you being present to yourself here and now. Any thoughts or worries, imagine that with each exhale, they just gently float away. And on your next inhale in, I invite you to bring your awareness to your heart. And if you like, you can put your hand on your heart to deepen that connection. Your beautiful beating heart is the place of which you are connected to all that is. I invite you to imagine now that you are now breathing through your heart chamber. The air flowing beautifully in and out. And I invite you now to imagine that you have roots growing from the soles of your feet deep into Mother Earth. Feeling your deep connection to her love, to her wisdom, to her peace. And imagine now that that love and that wisdom and that peace begins to flow up those roots from deep in Mother Earth, up through your legs, through your body, and into your heart. And as it reaches your heart, it opens this place for you to access and remember who you truly are. All of who you truly are. Imagine now that your crown chakra is opening and your I am presence is beginning to flow more freely down into your heart. And I invite you to feel compassion. Compassion for the beautiful, magnificent person that you are. And with your next breath, I invite you to consciously open your heart to remember that place of I am. To know that whatever happens, you are loved. You are cared for. And in truth, you are all that is. And I invite you to bring that I am presence to any unhealed wounds that you're aware of. To shine the light on the shadow, to give you the strength and the courage to begin to heal those wounds, to open up the capacity for you to flow more of that beautiful divine self that you are into your life and into the world. And on your next breath in, I invite you to bring your awareness back to the room as you affirm